But a Colorado candidate this year, backed by far-right Christians for a stand on gays and abortion, it said, wants to legally force innocent mothers who have been raped or victimized by incest to carry their pregnancies to term without their consent. Take back our country, they say, for God is on our side, while bullied teenage gays commit suicide, as do homecoming soldiers who enlisted to kill on demand overseas. And that brings us to another American election in a week with religious overtones. Anti-social services candidates claiming religious motivations campaign to abolish public education, student loans, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, while claiming to be in favor of limited government without taxes, even though spending trillions on war and foregoing tax savings on the rich. Global warming, state taxes, medical marijuana centers are Marxist inventions, we are told. Two faith celebrities were in the news last week. Glenn Beck of Fox News, the New Yorker reports, is the, quote, most highly regarded, end of quote, by Tea Party activists. He has created a university online, which you might be interested in, with courses entitled Faith 101, Hope 102, and Charity 103. James Dobson of our own little town here lashed out, this is a quote, lashed out against Obama, abortion, gays, socialists, and global warming, end of quote, urging people of faith to vote in November against these issues. And a Minnesota congressman's election bid is being targeted by the Tea Party because he is a Muslim. In the upcoming election in Colorado, State Amendment 62 would define a person as a human being from, quote, the beginning of biological development, end of quote. That is, from the moment of conception, when the sperm enters the egg, even before an embryo or fetus exists. This is a sincere religious belief based on faith, but not necessarily a legal mandate. Last year, we were required to believe on faith that corporations are really persons. The Supreme Court empowered them to impersonally flood the election process with money, or as Jesus called it, mammon. A more implicit issue is State Amendment 63. This amendment is designed, its drafters tell us, to kill the 2010 federal health care law on the basis that it really is death care, killing live embryonic stem cells, allowing euthanasia, and suicide. The Thomas More Law Center, a Christian legal organization urging the end of the federal law, has proposed such amendments in several states and is in the process of bringing legal cases in courts to restore control to the insurance companies that created the health care problem in the first place. The amendment attacks the requirement that all participate in the program, much like we require with automobile licensing, Social Security, Medicare. Where will this end? Are we moving towards a secular theocracy here? A few weeks ago, across the water, the Israeli Knesset passed a law requiring its non-Jewish citizens to recognize the existence of Israel as a Jewish state, along with special rights for Jews. The law is aimed at Arab, Muslim, and Christian Palestinians living in Israel who have Israeli citizenship, and is directly in conflict with the words of the 1948 Declaration of Independence of Israel, which requires equal rights for citizens and non-citizens alike, regardless of faith. And friends of ours over there, Israeli Jews living in Palestine and Israel, rabbis for human rights, and other groups of Jews who are faithful, as we see it, to the testimony of their fathers and their ancestors, are not for this proposition, but they're in a minority. Finally, an American gubernatorial candidate referring to the Don't Ask, Don't Tell military policy declared unconstitutional recently by a federal district judge, mused that legal rights may be taken away from American citizens if such constitutional rights create a, quote, negative impression on a significant number of Americans. And to quote, I went to law school, and Eric did too. I mean, it was a long time ago for me at Georgetown in 1957, but the test for giving and taking away legal propositions is a constitutional test and not a negative impression or some utilitarian political standard that a majority of people would favor, and yet we have a candidate espousing that. The others are all around us and in great numbers and may be victorious in the week to come. Will this American anger fired by radio talk show hosts and millions of dollars in ads usher in well-educated but politically illiterate and dangerous representatives of yet a new order based on religiously motivated agendas? Several candidates believe, as Sharon Engel does, that God has called them to transform our country by imposing their religious views on our government, politically and legally. Are we to become a so-called democratic, theocratic America, with violence used to beat up opponents at election time that you may have heard of? The latest only yesterday? Only time will tell what will happen, and the votes of the American citizens will determine. My colleagues Eric Hall and Linda Seeger, both of whom I've known for 7 years as good friends, will continue our presentation, and I look forward to their comments and believe everything they say as long as it agrees with everything I just said.